Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm bringing you another deeply emotional episode in the arduous journey of CEO James and Diep. As you saw in the previous episode, James, once a strong and resilient man, has endured some of the most heartbreaking moments of his life. He lost his child and he lost Diep, the woman he loved with all his heart. And up until now, he still hasn't been able to find her. Every step he takes is driven by hope, by the fragile belief that somewhere out there Diep is still alive, and that she still remembers him. But reality has been far more cruel. Diep, after being severely injured while fleeing, was rescued by Lee. However, the trauma to her head caused her to lose her memory. Now, all she has are vague, fragmented memories. No names, no faces, no clear emotions. She doesn't know who she is. And even more painful is the fact that the name James, the man who once meant the world to her, now feels completely unfamiliar. Can Diep slowly regain her memory? Does her heart still carry the image of James, buried deep within? And can their love, a love that has endured so many trials, overcome this final test? Stay with us until the end of today's episode to find the answers. Don't miss a single detail, because any moment could be a turning point. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you won't miss the next emotional chapters of this story. James and Officer Lee were meeting more frequently than ever, in discreet conversations at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. James had been providing Lee with crucial information clues that seemed insignificant at first, but gradually revealed a sophisticated criminal network hiding behind the name John. From transaction documents, cargo inventories, and shady business conversations James had overheard in the industry, Lee and his investigative team pieced together a shocking conclusion. John wasn't just a timber dealer, as his cover suggested. In truth, the timber shipments were a front for an elaborate international drug trafficking operation. Behind John was an entire transnational criminal organization, with a network stretching across multiple neighboring countries. Lee looked at James, his gaze intense and resolute. "I need you to gather more information from foreign suppliers as much as you can. Those contacts might be the key to exposing the entire network." James nodded without hesitation. He knew the risks. It was dangerous, extremely dangerous. But after everything he had lost after the death of his son and Diep's disappearance, he couldn't just sit back. If John was involved, he had to expose him at all costs. Lee, in turn, pledged to expand the investigation beyond borders, working with international law enforcement agencies. Two men from vastly different worlds now united as allies in a relentless war. As their meeting ended, Lee extended his hand, his eyes filled with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, James. Without you, this case would be nearly impossible to crack." James gave a slight nod. There was no need for more words, because they both knew this battle had only just begun. That night, the city was bathed in a dim yellow glow. The stifling summer air clung to every corner of the wind, swirling through empty streets. In a small apartment on the third floor of an aging building, Officer Lee sat silently at his desk. In front of him were thick stacks of case files, each page filled with information about the John case, the man posing as a timber trader, whom Lee suspected to be a key link in the international drug trafficking ring he had been chasing for months. The desk lamp cast a pale light across his stern face. Lee's brows furrowed as he spotted an irregularity in John's company's financial report. Before he could make a note, the doorbell rang, snapping him out of focus. Lee stood up and opened the door. Standing before him was a man in his early 40s, dressed in a crisp white shirt, wearing an expensive Swiss watch and thin-rimmed glasses that gave off an intellectual air. But what caught Lee's attention wasn't the polished exterior, it was the man's eyes. Sharp, calculating and loaded with unspoken intent. "My name is Hiku. You've probably heard of me," the man said. Lee didn't respond immediately. In his mind, information surfaced Neon Van Hiku, a well-known local businessman, owner of several real estate projects, and, according to intelligence reports, a shadowy figure with deep underground connections. For a man like him to show up at Lee's home unannounced, this was no simple visit. "What do you want?" Lee asked, eyes locked on the man before him. Without delay, Hiku walked in and sat down, placing a luxurious leather briefcase on the desk. Calmly, he opened it, revealing stacks of money, neatly arranged. The scent of fresh cash filled the air. "1 billion. I came to negotiate," Hiku said, his tone composed but with a subtle undertone of menace. "I know you're leading the investigation into John. I want you to go easy on him. If you can clear his name entirely, even better. Money is not a problem. I'll pay more if needed." Lee sat down, silent for a few seconds. Part of him seethed at the arrogance, the brazenness, the blatant attempt to undermine justice. But another part of him recognized the opportunity. This was the breakthrough he'd been waiting for. A way to infiltrate the underworld that had, until now, only shown its surface. "1 billion isn't enough," Lee said flatly. "With my position, if I get caught, I lose everything. That price doesn't cut it." Hiku narrowed his eyes, clearly displeased at being rejected. He studied Lee closely, analyzing every reaction. Lee leaned forward slightly, his gaze shifting slowly from the briefcase to Hiku's face, and spoke in a low, deliberate voice. "I don't want to be just another cop taking money to keep quiet. I want in. I want to actually be a part of your system. I have skills. I have information. And if I'm on the inside, I can keep you one step ahead of any investigation." Hiku remained silent. The tension between the two filled the room like smoke. Lee pressed on, each word baiting the hook. "I know the law. I understand investigative protocols, and I know how to make things disappear on paper. 1 billion can't buy my loyalty. But if you want someone truly embedded, someone who will make your organization stronger, then I'm your man." Hiku wasn't fully convinced yet. He stood up, pacing slowly around the room, deep in thought. For men like him, one wrong move could collapse the entire empire. But Lee's confidence, his composure, it was unsettling. Lee knew it, and he raised the stakes further. "I'm not the idealistic type of cop. I'm practical. I want money. Yes, but more than just a stack of bills and a goodbye. I want to share in the operation. A long-term cut. A position in the game." Hiku stopped, turned and looked at him. "If I agree, what can you actually do?" "I'll supply intelligence. Give you early warnings before anything goes down. I'll delay police action when you need time. And if necessary, I'll eliminate minor threats before they become real problems." After a long pause, Hiku gave a slow, meaningful nod. "I'll give you a chance, but only one. And if you betray us, I won't have to explain the consequences." Lee smiled faintly, extending his hand. Behind that smile was a brewing storm. He knew he had just stepped into the lion's den, but it was the only way to reach the heart of the international drug cartel. The game had begun, and from now on, he was the mole inside enemy lines. On Diep's side, after a long period of living in a haze, her memory had slowly begun to return. At first, it was just faint fragments. A name, a smile, a pair of eyes. But gradually, things became clearer. One quiet afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the window and a gentle breeze tousled her hair, Diep suddenly froze mid-cleaning. She gripped the edge of the table, her heart pounding. "My name is Diep," she whispered. And just like that, a wave of memories surged through her. She saw James, the man who had been appearing in her hazy dreams all this time. She remembered his gentle smile, the way he looked at her as if she were the only person in the world. She recalled moments of happiness, sweet whispers, and then she remembered why she had run. The name John flashed through her mind like a nightmare. She remembered that he was after her. That was why she had to flee, to hide even if her memory had been a blank slate. In Diep's mind, John was still out there, dangerous, cunning, willing to do anything to silence her. She had no idea that he'd already been arrested, or that his entire network was now under thorough investigation. Diep still believed she was the weak link, the one vulnerability that could bring danger to James. She couldn't let herself be caught. If she fell into John's hands again, it wouldn't just be her in danger, it would be James too. With part of her memory restored, Diep knew she had to act. She wanted to speak with Lee, the man who had taken care of her during this time, to tell him the truth, and to ask him to let her leave. She didn't want to involve anyone else in her mess. But fate had other plans. As she approached the staircase leading to the ground floor, Diep halted. Voices drifted up from the living room. She stopped by the wall, intending to turn back, but the fragments of conversation rooted her in place. 1 billion isn't enough. I want in on the operation. I want a stake in the system. Are you sure? If this gets exposed, no one can protect you. I know, but money and power, that's what I want. I don't want to be just a cop. Diep froze. That voice, it was Lee, the man who had saved her, cared for her, protected her when she had nothing. Now talking with a stranger about a criminal operation. Her mind spun. Her heart raced. She couldn't fully grasp what they were discussing, but it was enough to shake her to the core. So he's not who I thought he was, she thought bitterly. He's one of them, maybe. He only rescued me to get information. Maybe he wants to hand me back to John. Or worse, maybe he's part of the same organization. Fear surged through her, sharp and overwhelming. She clenched her fists. The feeling of betrayal cut deep, like a blade through her chest. In that moment, Diep knew she had to leave, no matter what. If she stayed, she risked becoming a pawn, a threat to James, the man she loved most. She longed to return to him, to tell him she remembered, that her love for him never faded. But at the same time, she was terrified. What if going back now dragged James into the storm she carried with her? Conflicted and torn, Diep took a deep breath, looking around the home she had once believed was safe. She couldn't wait any longer. She had to leave quietly, silently, without being noticed. Under the dim hallway light, Diep turned away, her footsteps soft as a shadow. After leaving Lee's house, Diep walked away in a rush, confused, anxious. She didn't dare look back. She didn't even know where she was going. She had no money, no phone, and all traces of her identity had been wiped away with her lost memories. The only thing she was certain of was this: she had to get far away, as far as possible, from the place she once believed was safe. She had considered trying to contact James, but then she dismissed the thought just as quickly. She was afraid. If she was being tracked, any attempt to reach out could put James in danger. And the last thing she wanted was to become a burden or a weakness to him. So Diep kept walking, through unfamiliar streets, down shadowy alleyways, past stretches of road with no lights. She wandered into a desolate suburb where every footstep was accompanied only by the wind and the aching echo of her own thoughts. With no transportation, she had no choice but to walk. Her body was exhausted. Her legs felt like they could collapse at any moment, and hunger gnawed mercilessly at her stomach. Every shop she passed was already closed. Every home lit by a warm yellow light felt like a distant world, a world of peace and comfort that no longer belonged to her. Night fell. Darkness consumed the streets, and Diep still hadn't found shelter. Out of options, she slumped against the wall of a building on a quiet corner. The wind cut through her thin clothing like knives. Her eyes fluttered shut from fatigue. That night, Diep slept on the street. No blanket, no pillow, no one beside her. Only the cold, the hunger, and a crushing loneliness that wrapped around her chest like iron chains. As for James, after countless days of searching in vain, despite his body being worn down and his heart slowly withering from loss, he never once thought of giving up. Every night, after finishing his work and wrapping up his secret meetings with Officer Lee, James would return to the small, time-worn house. The place once filled with sweet memories of him and Diep. He would gently open the door, clean every corner, wipe the dust off the windowsills, and rearrange the old belongings. As if, by making the house tidy and warm again, Diep might suddenly walk through the door smiling and calling his name like she used to. Sometimes, he'd sit for hours on the front steps, eyes fixed on the empty road, just waiting for that familiar figure to return. Many said he was losing his mind, but James believed. With every shattered piece of his heart, he believed Diep was still alive. He believed she hadn't forgotten him. And he believed that one day, no matter how long the storms and separation lasted, she would find her way back to him. It wasn't hope anymore. It was a silent promise etched deep into his soul. Everyone, let's send some love and encouragement to James and Diep. Leave a comment. A blessing help fuel their journey toward reunion. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss the next chapter of this emotional story airing tomorrow. Let's wait together and see whether fate will bring them back to each other.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người, mình vừa mới hoàn thành xong tập tiếp theo của video Lý từ Diệp á mọi người. Thì trong tập này Diệp thì vẫn đang lang thang ở ngoài đường. Cô đang giữa hai dòng phân vân, là một là sẽ tìm về với James, còn hai là cô sẽ lang thang để cho kiểu không làm ảnh hưởng đến Diep á mọi người. Nhưng mà hiện tại thì mình thấy là cái quyết định của Diệp thì nó đang chưa được đúng đắn cho lắm. Tại vì nếu như mà Diệp liên hệ với James và để sắp xếp thì mọi thứ sẽ ổn thỏa hơn, hay là có thể do Diệp mất trí nhớ, Diệp chưa thể nhớ ra số điện thoại của James, và lại Diệp đi lang thang như thế thực sự là không an toàn, trong khi Diệp có thể làm những thứ an toàn hơn. Ví dụ như trên người Diệp hiện tại đang có một bộ trang sức giả khá là đắt tiền do mẹ James tặng, thì hiện tại trong hoàn cảnh khó khăn thì đấy cũng là một cách Diệp có thể cầm cố để có thể vượt qua khó khăn hiện tại. Nhưng hiện tại cô ấy lại chọn ngủ ngoài đường thì điều đó khá là nguy hiểm. Vậy thì chúng ta sẽ cùng đón xem tập sau để xem là mọi chuyện sẽ diễn biến như thế nào mọi người nhé.